Welcome to Voice for Infection Prevention, where we explore the latest developments, challenges, and insights in the field of infection prevention and control. With a passion for promoting patient safety and healthcare excellence, we're excited to bring you engaging discussions with experts, leaders, and innovators in the field. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey in infection prevention, welcome to the conversation. This is Voice for Infection Prevention.
Welcome back to Voice for Infection Prevention. I'm your host, Jacob Hutcherson. Today I'm thrilled to have Erin Beck Wilder join the show. Erin is an infection preventionist with a wealth of experience managing infection prevention and control programs across diverse healthcare settings. Currently serving as the Director of Infection Prevention at Kootenai Health, Erin's dedication to ensuring patient safety is evident in her extensive credentials and professional background. In this episode, we'll have the privilege of delving into Erin's impressive career with a Master of Public Health, a registered nurse licensure, certifications in infection control and healthcare quality, and a Lean Six Sigma black belt. Erin's expertise is unmatched. Her experience spans acute care, behavioral health, long-term care, home care, and various outpatient settings, demonstrating her versatility and commitment to infection prevention. Join us as we explore Erin's insights, discuss her strategies for managing infection prevention programs, and uncover the keys to success in ensuring safe and effective healthcare delivery across diverse settings.
This episode is sponsored by Clutch Recruitment, the leading recruiting firm in the country, recruiting exclusively within infection prevention and control.
So my name is Erin Beck Wilder, and I'm a nurse by trade, and so I also have my master's in public health, certified infection prevention, and I have certification in healthcare quality as well. I'm currently the Director of Infection Prevention at Kootenai Health in Coeur, Idaho.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So it looks like you, and I've got your LinkedIn pulled up, so I'm not doing all of this on memory. I'm going off the resume here. But it looks like you started off as a registered nurse and then found your way into infection prevention around 2006. So why don't you go ahead and talk to us about that transition? How were you convinced to jump into infection prevention?
Yeah, that was really interesting and really surprising for me. I was a registered nurse working in acute care, doing weekend nights, so I had gotten a little tired of the schedule, and I was looking for something different, but I had no idea what I was looking for. So I was searching our company website of all the available positions, and they had one for an infection control practitioner, and it was day shift Monday through Friday. And so I was reading the job description, and it was basically you do surveillance for hospital-acquired infections, some communicable disease reporting, outbreak investigations, those types of things. And it all sounds very interesting. So I applied for the position, interviewed for the position, got a lot of feedback and a lot of, this is what we do and this is what we do. But really the day that I started the job, I really wasn't quite sure what all it involved. And now it's almost 20 years in, I have a better idea of what the job entails. Less surprises today, but the first couple of years was very much learning. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So a couple questions here. So the biggest thing for you, it sounded like, was schedule, at least initially, because this gave you more of an 8 to 5. Is that okay? Now, and I'm thinking about the kind of current shortage that we're facing. I've heard really that it's become tremendously more difficult to convince an RN off of the floor because, particularly since COVID, nurse pay has gone up and schedules don't seem to be nearly as intense as they used to be. At that time, was there a financial incentive for you as well, or was it purely schedule?
It was, for me, it was purely schedule. I had worked weekend nights for nearly 8 years. And so I was looking for something during the day. Really had to do with my own personal family life. My children were in school, and I didn't need to be working every weekend the way it was. So That was a huge benefit. The pay at the time was lateral. I mean, it was very equal. I didn't lose any money, but I didn't gain any money. For what I've seen in the changes for, in this past almost 2 decades that I've been doing this, I do believe that the pay has gone up certainly for infection preventionists. So.
Yeah. Okay. And then, okay, so you jumped into this role. How big of a hospital was this, and how big of a team did you join?
So, excellent question. It's a 500-bed hospital. It also had many outpatient locations, which we did have responsibility for. They were mostly doctor's offices and those kinds of things. It wasn't it was only one single hospital. We did have 2 nursing homes, etc. So it was a little bit larger, and there was 2 of us. There was the manager and myself.
Goodness. Okay, so I'm laughing because that sounds like a lot. Was the census like
And
250, or were you just well understaffed?
No. For the time, this is before public reporting, so
Okay.
for the time we were probably understaffed, but it wasn't a census thing. We were a 500-bed hospital. We were busting at the seams, admitting to the hallways pretty much routinely. So yeah, that was not a bed
Wow.
census
Wow.
difference. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I guess it was a different world back then, but
Yes.
I'm still just can't fathom 2 people over that large of a facility. Um, but okay, so you jumped into this. It looks like you stayed in this role for about 3 years before eventually getting promoted to the manager. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into this. Um, you didn't know. I may be putting your words into your mouth, but it sounds like you didn't really know what infection prevention was. It seemed vaguely like it seemed somewhat interesting to you, but the schedule is kind of what brought you there. Um, so how did you get through interviews? Was it purely just they just needed somebody that like how did you sell yourself for an infection prevention position?
Well, I am relatively intelligent and very inquisitive. They were more than interested in training somebody. They were not looking for anyone with experience. They had hired both in the past before me, so I'm sure I benefited from that. They had people come in with experience who decided that they were going to not do things in the same manner as the people who had been there for a long time wanted to do. And then they also had some individuals that they had tried to train that just didn't work out. So I was a sponge my first 2 years. I still have a relationship with the 2 people who mentored me there. And they talk about what a sponge I was. I was just soaking up the information. They told me to do something. I learned how to do it and I did it. So I was really, my interview process was just my inquisitive nature. I was definitely ready to try something new. They had concerns that I was going to miss being at the bedside and that people interaction directly with the patients. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think for new IPs, that's something that you really need to dig deep and know whether or not you are comfortable with leaving that, because a lot of times nurses go into nursing because they want to have that help, but you don't get that direct feedback on a day-to-day basis, rarely as an IP. But the real concept there is that you're actually improving patient care for a lot more patients than you are providing patient care to your one assignment. So the influence and the impact that you make is can be bigger.
Wow.
So that was it in a nutshell. They were looking for me. I was looking for them. It was meant to be.
Excellent. No, that's great. And and how did you go? I know you were a sponge, and you mentioned 2 mentors there. Um, so it sounds like you're pretty well supported in the new role. I mean, they had brought in somebody with the intent to train them. Did you have any sort of like? Did you join a local APIC chapter? Did you have any sort of support outside of the hospital system for the first couple years?
We did join the local APIC chapter, or I did. The hospital, the facility, the leadership, my mentors understood infection control, understood APIC, sent me to APIC training, encouraged me to take my CIC, got me connected with the local APIC chapter, and I attended those meetings. We had monthly meetings initially. So all of those things very good. But I'm going to go back to my mentors again. I was very, very fortunate. I had one mentor who had been doing infection control since the early 80s, and another one who had been doing it for about 15 years. So between the two of them, they had probably pretty close to 50 years experience, maybe 40 if my math is off.
Wow.
So I had very excellent mentors who really just love sharing all their knowledge with me and supporting me. So
Excellent. And then at what point, when in your infection prevention career did you pass the CIC?
Oh, 2 years. That was the expectation. There
Okay.
was no wiggle room on that.
Okay. And they say most people fail and that it's a very hard test. So did it take you a couple tries, or was it a
No,
one and done?
I didn't. I say different. I had a lot of experience. I think again, being in a larger hospital, being exposed to a lot more things. There's a lot of things I learned. My mentors constantly said, look it up, look it up, look it up with every question I had. Where's your resources? What does APIC Tech say? So I was really well versed in that. They also did support me going to a CIC prep course through National APIC. And so I was able to do that, as well as I studied on my own through one of the reference books. And
Awesome.
I only took it once. So, yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Good deal. All right. And then it looks like, I mean, I mentioned earlier, but you got promoted to manager. So what did that look like? Was that you had you at this point decided, okay, I want to make infection prevention into a career? I really love this. Did a position just open up, or what was the whole kind of mindset and then the transition?
So I was getting more comfortable. I had gone from those days where, what am I doing here? I don't know anything, to being able to answer questions and having a lot more knowledge base to draw from. Unfortunately, one of my mentors retired. And so that opened up to a position. Initially, I had declined it, really just because I didn't feel that I had all the tools I needed. Um, Through some time, support, and one of my other mentors, who was actually the director of quality with the years of experience in IP, she supported me a lot. And so with her leadership and guidance, I learned what I needed to, both for infection control as well as the leadership piece of that. And not only leading a team of one, I understand, but a small team, but also leading the program, designing the program. I was given a program that was very structured, so I had the benefit of just maintaining it, updating it, and that I didn't have to build it from scratch. But having that experience with a very well structured program did help me step into subsequent roles where there was pieces of the program that I recognized that I wanted to implement. So that is that transition. That was, again, another, I feel like all learning experiences can have pain points. So in retrospect, I was probably unprepared for it. Not that I wasn't competent, but again, another learning curve. So.
Okay. So back to the staff position that you had, how long was it before you felt like, and I understand infection prevention, you're always learning something new, and it's if there's any character trait that I've learned, it's you got to be constantly curious and just a active learner. There's always new things coming at you. So even though that's a reality, when did you feel comfortable in infection prevention? When did you feel like you really had a handle on it?
This is how it was described to me. I would say that that I assessed it in my own experience, and I agree with it. It's about a 2-year learning curve. Really, one of the reasons why they put the CIC at that mark. Your first 6 months, you're still learning quite a bit. After 6 months, there's a lot that you really need to look for guidance on or research it. But there's after 2 years, you've got really a solid knowledge base, and you're looking up less all the time. So that's what I subscribe to. I do believe it's about 2 years, with the first 6 months being the hardest.
And then just a follow up on that, when did you decide that you really loved infection prevention?
Every day it's a new decision. I'm not sure. I'm not sure when I made the commitment to say this is it. But each and every year, if you can stick with it, that first 6 months, that's, really when you're like, what am I doing? I'm not competent to do this. Um, you know, the more and more I got into it, the more and more I really loved it. And I've had opportunities to get promoted, into more of a quality role. I have dabbled in I did home care for quite a while, as really a second job. And so I've done other things and had opportunities, but I want to say I've really confirmed my commitment probably about 10 years ago, that I wasn't looking for a position that took me further away from infection prevention.
Gotcha. Okay. So the transition from staff level to manager, what was the biggest, well, I guess, where was the learning curve there, and what was kind of the biggest challenge in that? Obviously you're managing a person now, so you can speak to that a little bit. But I would imagine with it being just one person, the bigger deal is that everything kind of stops with you, and now it's kind of up to you to make some of those decisions. But can you just kind of talk through that, what the jump from practitioner to manager really looks like?
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that this is true everywhere for everyone, but my situation may have had a little bit of uniqueness about it. For the most part, prior to me being in that manager role, I did the majority of the day-to-day surveillance and that kind of thing. I managed the data, prepared it all for the infection prevention committee. So, and we in 2007 we began using NHSN through public reporting for our state. And so I did the majority of that type of management of the data. And my mentor, the previous manager, had done the majority of the people work, the policies, the collaboration, the maybe a little bit of the disagreements and that kind of thing. So as I stepped up, I had to learn a lot of that. So I didn't have really a lot of experience with the collaboration, the meetings, and those kinds of things. And so I was really, I want to say I was really woken up to the idea that, people do see things through different sides of a prism. Their viewpoints can be very different when looking at the same thing. There's competing priorities. Infection prevention isn't always at the top. And so that was one piece. And then the people management piece was a little difficult. I want to say there was a few times where I, being a new manager, I was exactly that. I was new, was not great at doing a lot of things. But there was some excellent wins there for me. And then there was some opportunities to learn how to manage people a little bit better, how to support them, and also how to grow a team that's supportive. So yeah,
Awesome.
lots of learning opportunities in that transition for sure.
Yeah, and you stayed in that role for 6 years. It looks like. Then, looks like you left. I am guessing this is a relocation. It looks like you left and took a senior infection preventionist role.
Yes.
So can you talk through that? So reading on paper, it appears, without knowing anything more, it appears you took a step back, at least in title. So if you could explain kind of that decision, what happened, and kind of, well, yeah, just explain that transition, how that played out.
It's actually, I think it was a terminology thing because it was set up very similar. It was in a different organization, a little closer to home. There was one IP that reported to me. It was just a title thing. So I basically, it was a lateral move with a slight pay differential. So increase, obviously, in a shorter ride. And honestly, as I looked back and made that decision, my decision was based on the fact that I had done the same thing. So I had 1 year of experience 6 times. Um, and so I really wanted to broaden. I mean, I basically moving into a new facility, I doubled my experience. And so I saw things from a whole different perspective and a whole new culture. I saw how to do things different. I saw what worked in one facility didn't work in another facility. That was the intent, was to gain more experience, a little shorter drive. And I certainly did. I did do that.
Awesome. Okay. So, all right, I want to sit on this title thing for a minute, because there seems to be a lot of confusion on this. So, in your mind now, having worked in this position, how important is a title? Obviously, at some point, you decided, who cares about title? It's the same responsibility. Do you still feel that way? And then, let's start there. What's your thoughts on title? Is that a problem? Is it something just to ignore? Did it give you any sort of advantage having a manager title that you didn't have when you took the new position? So tell me well, you already kind of explained what you were thinking there. Didn't mean anything. Do you still feel the same way?
For me personally, I am not a title person. It is not anything that I look at differently. However, I do see that the world does. And that was a learning opportunity, I guess, because I did that. And we're sitting here talking about that. You tell me it looked like a step back. That is the perception. However, I don't think necessarily that it should be. And that's my perspective on it.
Nice. Did you, operationally in the hospital, did you have a harder time gaining respect from your peers, maybe physicians or whatnot, because of the title? Or did you not see a difference at all when it came to your day-to-day interactions?
I do not believe that the title made a difference so much as the culture can make a difference. Yeah, I have had very big wins and influences in a position where the title didn't say manager or director, and I've had very difficult ability to influence with a director title. So I think it just really depends on the organization.
Great.
The organization, the people involved, the culture, your ability to articulate, your preparation, your knowledge.
Great.
Much more important than title.
And then staying on title, just because that's just a regular conversation when you start talking about career paths and growth. But did you, and this totally depends on the organization, so I'm curious, in this role, did you ever feel slighted, or was there ever a situation where you weren't invited to particular meetings that you were used to being invited to? For example, I've heard of several health systems or hospitals where, well, this meeting's for directors. You're not a director. It's like, well, that's not really a fair way to discount somebody from a meeting. So I guess what I'm saying, with that title, did you see any sort of, were you left out on any meetings you should have been purely because of title?
Probably yes. The answer to that is, however, meetings aren't the only place to have influence. And if you're resourceful enough, you can figure out how to influence what needs to be influenced. So yes, probably I was left out of meetings.
Right.
basically based on level in the organization.
Yeah. Okay. Now I want to hone into that a little bit because there's a lot of people that are facing the frustrations here. They don't feel like they are they don't feel like they can influence as well as they should be able to because of the title and because they're not taking part in meetings. How would you advise, or what were some creative ways that you went about affecting culture and influencing people um, with a title that didn't necessarily give you the advantage?
So I took advantage of let's see, a couple of things at this particular organization. Just a reporting structure. I would just keep my leadership involved and aware, offer to help out with different initiatives, shine light on where not only where our data is not really looking very good, but where we can make a difference, even if it's good, where we could be great. And so those conversations are a constant for me. Look, here's what we're doing. Here's where we need to go. And, and so I do take advantage of that. The other thing is that during that time, I was working on my master's in public health. And so I was able to do an internship, which I had used to kind of promote some more things and develop a working relationship with people outside of my reporting structure. My actual mentor was outside of the hospital reporting structure, so I had the opportunity to influence other divisions within the organization as well. And I spoke on something just now that I think is important to highlight is the relationships outside of the formal meeting. The organization was a little smaller, so the ability to form those relationships were really important. And that's how you could influence outside of those structured meetings with directors. Sometimes you find too those meetings aren't necessarily where things happen. So
Nice. Okay, that's a great answer. Um, okay, and then it looks like towards the end of this position, you picked up a role as a senior quality information specialist with Qcentrics. So correct me if I'm wrong. This is an organization that does remote surveillance work, correct? Okay. Um, did you just, what led you to pick up some extra hours at that organization?
that was the second job. I worked. I never worked as a primary job. It was a part time, flexible when I started. The hours were very flexible. I liked the exposure to additional abstraction. So it was a really good opportunity. I've worked for organizations that have contracted with Qcentrics, and it just seemed like an extra fun thing to do. I'm just a person who likes to do things. I finished up my master's degree, so I was like, all right, what can I do next? And so that was one of the things that I did. I will say that during COVID, I did resign from that position because I did not have the ability to manage two jobs. So,
Yeah, which makes complete sense. Now, this is the first job that I see that mentions quality at all. Obviously, you're certified in quality, and then you've also got your Lean Six Sigma black belt. So we'll dive into that in just a second. But was this truly a quality position, or was this kind of where you got your feet wet in quality?
no, actually, this was an abstraction job for infection prevention. So
Okay.
it was
Okay.
HAI. It was purely infection prevention abstraction. It's just the way that they titled that position. It was all under one umbrella.
Got it. Got it. Okay. And then, so at some point here, it looks like right before COVID, maybe you took a director of infection control position. So your first director position at Ellis Medicine. How big of a hospital is that? And what was the team that you were over?
So that was a little larger of a facility. I actually had two hospitals,
Nice.
a couple, I had basically what you would call a freestanding emergency department as well, and a whole host of outpatient locations as well, a network system, as well as a nursing home, a long-term care facility with rehab. So it was a little bigger. the team that I had there was myself, and then I had three infection preventionists that reported to me. One of them was part time, and
Gotcha.
the other two were full time.
Okay. Operationally, was this job much different than the two positions you had had previously, or did you have more of a kind of corporate role at this point?
The job itself was pretty similar. The team was different. So the team was a really a seasoned team that I came into largely. So they had, one of the infection preventionists there actually was working as an infection preventionist longer than I was. So her surveillance knowledge and that kind of thing was really amazing. Another one of the staff that was there, the IPs, she had just like this amazing ability of working with people, having conversations, the tough conversations. So it was a really nice dynamic team to lead. I will say that it didn't take too long before COVID kind of changed a lot of what we were doing. And so it's hard to even compare
Gotcha.
yeah. So initially all was going well. We were focused on C. diff and Ebola training for sure, because that was ongoing, but preparedness activities and things. And we were focused on central line infections, all of the basics until COVID. So.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you were here for about 3 years, and then you took a position, another director position, in Idaho, where you're at now. What about this one? Was this still a pretty similar role as to what you've been in the last, I guess, 4 opportunities?
So this position it is. It's a little different. It's a little bit more unique. We have a smaller, it's about I'm going to say about a 350 bed facility. And it's actually, we have 2 critical access hospitals associated with us. So something that I haven't had experience with in my past. And so when I took this position, this was my decision for what my future in infection prevention is going to look like. And the area here is beautiful. If you've ever been out here, if you haven't, I suggest you come. I honestly, my last child had graduated from high school. And so I said, there's a great big world out there. What does it have for me? And here, this is a really wonderful organization to work for. Not saying the other ones weren't. I'm just saying it was time for looking for a little change for me, and relocating and discovering life in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Well, nice. So, all right, couple questions here, kind of taking a step back. At some point in your career, and you referenced it, but you went and got your master's degree. At some point, you got certified in quality. At some point, you got Lean Sigma black belt. So clearly, I mean, you're liking, like, you really enjoy adding things to your plate, new challenges, and learning new things. Let's see. How much would you recommend others? We'll start with the master's in public health. You had a nursing background. It's not often you have a nursing background paired with an MPH, so it seems like that'd be an awesome skill set or like educational background to have. As far as your actual job, how helpful was the MPH degree for you?
So when I was pursuing my MPH, I did it through really a benefit that the organization offered. It's tuition assistance. I did it very slow. I may be the world's only 8.5 year MPH student. But I did it one at a time. I was raising my children, working full time, sometimes 2 jobs. So it was one of those things that I just slow and steady. And I basically used to always tell everyone, well, this just makes me more qualified for the position I have. I'm not pursuing anything different. This is for me. And so it's something that I wanted to do. In hindsight, however, I would say that it's been very helpful. It's been very helpful in making me competitive when I do, if I have an interest in a job. So the things that I learned in the master's program, it was quite interesting to see some of the things that you learn as far as program management and those things. I learned in an official capacity in an academic setting with structure and textbooks, very much aligned with some of the things that I learned from my mentors. But I will say overall, I mean, I would never regret any type of education. So, and when I went and got my nursing degree, I have a bachelor's in nursing. I also got a bachelor's. I did a double major in biology as well. Again, because I wanted the learnings, cost the same amount of money. So I just took a few extra classes to get both. So
Awesome.
I do like challenging myself. So.
Yeah, and it looks like, so like I said, at some point you also added the CPHQ and the Lean Six Sigma black belt. Um, from what I understand, a black belt is just a ton of work too. So you got quality, you've got a little more performance improvement. So it's a little outside of your job, although I know it's all within the quality department for the most part. But what was the motivation there to get those two certifications, and how, I guess, would you recommend others do the same when we're talking about a infection prevention career?
Yeah, so the organizations that I've worked for, a lot of times they'll support additional credentialing. Most of my organizations that I've been working at have been magnet facilities, so having nurses that are certified is a real big thing for magnet institutions. And then there's usually funding that comes, for some types of certifications. So I really just took advantage of what was there. Again, sometimes, not every organization, but some organizations will either pay for you to sit for the exam, or they'll offer an annual additional bonus for having a certification that's not a requirement of your job. So I enjoyed the learning. I think it can't hurt. So the healthcare quality, I think infection prevention is probably the premier quality program in a hospital. We're not really any different. It's just that our focus is on infections. And so all of the performance improvement concepts and all of the quality things, the ideas and structures are very applicable to infection prevention.
Awesome. And then something I've been asking everybody at your level, and this is not necessarily personal to you, but I'm curious as to what's next. When you have someone at the system director level, as far as scope goes, what's the next career step? I mean, it seems like the only real option if you want to stay within infection prevention is just to get a few more beds or a couple more facilities, which isn't enough for some people. Some people are already at the top of that. So I'm curious as to how do you continue? You've done it throughout your entire career. So how do you continue challenging yourself? What do you add? I've seen, you'll see people add patient safety or quality or employee health to their title. I've learned typically that involves maybe $5,000 extra a year, and you just took on a full-time position. So I don't know if that's necessarily something that anybody would recommend, but it seems like that's very common. I used to think it was common to just be promoted up into quality, but I've learned you may not have the same philosophy on this, but a lot of people view quality and infection prevention as very different careers, and there's just no real interest to make that jump. But I'm curious for you, what does it look like? What's next? Somebody with your background, kind of what you've experienced, what would be a feasible kind of next step, or what's your next challenge?
So I'm taking a step back. When I did accept this position, I had other opportunities, and I had to do some soul searching as to whether or not I wanted to take on more and more responsibility, or whether or not I wanted to see what a work-life balance would look like, which I will admit I'm not very good at. So Um, I have, I chose to come here instead of at really, a very, I had a very exciting opportunity with, multiple a system type, director with bigger, bigger facilities, more responsibility, a much larger team of 15. And again, my soul searching brought me here. And so, what's next for me is something that I've been struggling with, like, what is next for me? Because I do like to keep myself challenged. Do I want to go and pursue a DNP? Do I want to go and pursue, a director of quality position? Do I want to, now that I've done this for a few years, do I want to see what it looks like to, take on a very large organization, um, and, run that kind of thing? And for me, what I'm looking at now is how to give back. So I am looking at mentoring. I'm looking at really growing my own team. I want to, leave our profession with a few more certified, very competent people to go it off and lead the big, systems or the small facilities, whatever they want. But those are the things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at ways to give back. So I've connected on a national level, participated in some of the APIC networking events, met up with some people that I have routine conversations with, talking with them about, I learn from them, they learn from me. And I'm doing a couple other things that hopefully will be given back to our profession.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. And then one more question I'm going to try to squeeze in here before our time. And you've now got a team under you. You've had direct reports for a while now. I'm curious your hiring philosophy. Do you have any preference on their educational background, or do you like to have a mix, or kind of when you go into adding somebody underneath you? I don't know. What's your philosophy on all of that? Who would make the best IP, or do you think that there's plenty of paths for that?
So I like to have a team that's very diverse. I don't see the benefit of having redundant skills. So I do look for that. However, hiring different people with different backgrounds, I do think it's helpful to have some kind of a knowledge of how care delivery occurs. RNs, obviously come with that, but I think, I've had success with hiring individuals who are not RNs as well. So I think that you need to be curious. I think you need to be open to feedback. I think you need to be okay not knowing everything. And so sometimes that, people have difficulty saying, I'm not sure, let me go look that up, or that kind of thing. So I think you just need to have somebody who's curious, open, detail oriented is something that I think is a key. If you miss some details, it can be pretty detrimental to what we do every day. So those are the kinds of things that I look for when I'm
Great.
hiring.
Great. No, that's perfect. Okay. Um, that's all I've got, and we've got 2 minutes before the end of the time, so I don't want to keep you over. Do you have anything that you want to close with, any encouragement to whoever, or anything that you've done in your career that you just want to highlight and speak on that we just haven't covered?
I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about giving back,
Yeah.
really in the form of networking. So whether you're new or whether you're a seasoned IP, you can benefit from your local APIC chapter. You can benefit from the national conferences and national APIC. So I have talked to IPs who don't participate in their local chapter, and some of the rationale that they provide is that it just doesn't offer them anything. It's not really beneficial to them anymore. And I would challenge, those of us who, kind of may feel that way, that's the time that we start mentoring the new ones. So if you're new, get involved in APIC. And if you are seasoned and you have a lot to give, get involved in APIC. That networking is huge for us in our profession and kind of strengthening what we're doing.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Voice for Infection Prevention. We hope you found our discussions informative and insightful. Remember to subscribe to our podcast for more conversations with experts in the field, and don't forget to leave us a review to let us know what you think. For additional resources and to stay updated on the latest news in infection prevention, visit our website at voiceforip.com. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, stay safe and continue your commitment to excellence in infection prevention.